Trigger warning. Viewing the following content may cause intellectual strain and swelling of logical capacity. If you suffer from perpetual rectal discomfort, viewer discretion is advised.
I think as far as Gen Z goes, there's other issues that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
I think primary concerns of economic issues.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that leads into their ability to succeed. Like they're facing challenges that other generations didn't. And I think one of the best ways to kind of sum it up here, and I'm sharing an article real quick, Consumer Affairs, which is a fairly respectable website. I think a lot of people would agree that they're not necessarily the most radical in any direction. They released an article on June 1st, 2023.
Yeah.
And again, the takeaways from this article: Gen Z dollars today have 86% less purchasing power than those from when baby boomers were in their 20s. The cost of public and private school tuition has increased by 310% and 245% respectively since the 1970s, and Gen Zers and millennials are paying 57% more per gallon of gas than baby boomers.
Yeah.
Right, so that's just kind of like a general overview of some of the economic concerns. I think it's pretty pretty clear to say that there's some real challenges, and how can those challenges not affect the way that you look at the world? How could it not affect the way that you think about things that are going on? So from your perspective, it's not like you've really had a chance to get out there and like have a a real full-time job yet because you're still young.
Yeah.
But people, you see other people's struggles and the lives that other people live.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I feel like the biggest issue and also fear for Gen Z when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to finances and economics, is inflation. Gas prices for some time. I wouldn't really say now. I would say gas prices are definitely high, but it's not as bad as it was, like 2 years ago. I feel like that right now is not much of a problem, but it's a houses, house costs. Gen Z is just scared to kind of buy and pay a mortgage, because how expensive all that is. And they just don't want to, simply put, because it's so much money. They kind of have to deal with that. Not many people have had to kind of put up with that. And that is probably the biggest thing for them as far as it goes being independent. And, the amount of money they get from their jobs to pay for a mortgage and to pay for, their way of life, it's not like they can't, but it's definitely not practical for them. And that's something that Gen Z kind of doesn't get. Is like sometimes not everything is going to work out the way you want it, but they're known for wanting that. They're known for wanting everything to be their way and work out how they want.
Sure. That makes sense. And there's some supporting data to add to that.
Yeah.
That Consumer Affairs article that I mentioned, they have some data to back that up to a certain degree. Income is definitely a concern.
Yeah.
They show here from 1970 to 2020, right? The average income that American has enjoyed has grown by about 80%, right? But that's not been enough to keep up with the increase in the consumer price index,
Yeah.
which they show has grown exponentially. Right, and then you made the point about homes, right? So they also shared data about homes. In 1970, right now they have two sides to this, right? They have the money that it actually cost,
Yeah.
and then the money that it would cost if it was using today's money,
Yeah.
right? So that's called adjusted for 2022 inflation,
Yeah.
right? So in 1970, median home price. All right, now to be specific, right? Because not everybody is fully aware. Not everybody understands these terms, right? So, what do you think median
The
home price means? What do you think that specifically refers to?
the average home price.
Okay, that would be mean home price,
Oh,
right? Median literally means middle,
okay, yeah, yeah.
right? So, like you
Oh, yeah, you
take
take the number in the
take the
middle.
house that's free, right, and then
Then you
take
take
the
the
house
highest
that's
one.
like $80 million,
Yeah, you meet in the middle.
and right in whatever's in the middle of that distribution,
Yeah,
that's what they refer to as the median home price.
yeah.
Right. So going back to the graph, in 1970, the median home price was $24,800, right, and they're adjusting it for inflation to be $185,600, right, if it was $2022. Now come to 2022, and they're saying that the median home price is $370,600. Again,
That's
these numbers
ridiculous.
aren't necessarily all that useful
Yeah,
because, like I said, they're taking the home that you can get for free from uh, a seizure or whatever,
yeah,
and then they're taking the home that costs like $80 million,
yeah, yeah. It's kind
and
of
then just
exaggerated.
chopping it in half. Most homes don't fit that, right?
Yeah.
And then you take places like Los Angeles, you take places like Silicon Valley, you take places like New York, where their property values are so over bloated
Yeah,
unjustly because they're really not worth what they're worth.
yeah,
And then you take places like some patch of land like out in the desert in Arizona. Yeah, the median home price just really doesn't mean anything. What they really should do is look for the average home price.
yeah,
And to do a good average, you drop the bottom and top 10%,
yeah,
because those are outliers, right? Your bottom 10% is not going to be consistent, and neither is your top, right? So you take those two portions out, and whatever that 80th percentile is in the middle, you average that, and that's a much more accurate representation of what you could reasonably expect.
yeah,
So I would suspect that the average home price is substantially less than 370,000
yeah, yeah.
for
Absolutely.
most Americans, but it is what it is. And let's say millennials or Gen Zers are predominantly in big cities,
Yeah,
so yeah, maybe that is what they're looking at, and that scares them,
Yeah.
or that demoralizes them and makes them think that they can't use that. So you combine that with the lower wages. I think you can make a reasonable case to say that maybe they do have some valid concerns.
yeah,
But I also think that there's an attitude there that just kind of it's kind of like a combination of nihilism and somewhere between nihilism and laziness.
yeah,
Like Gen Zs and millennials started the quiet quitting thing,
yeah,
and my generation always understood that if you want something, you got to go get it.
Yeah.
You gotta work to make it happen. So a difference in generation, sure.
yeah. Speaking of a difference in generation, I have a graph here from the Washington Post. This was posted in 2021,
Okay.
and it says, Gen Z, for Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, and their views on different aspects onto what quarantine has kind of made things more difficult to do. And in the graph, in the differences, you could see, the differences between generation, how they look at things. For example, pursuing a career, 46% of Gen Z thinks that it is more difficult to pursue a career due to the pandemic. And then 36% of millennials agree that it's harder, and 31% of Gen X think that it's more difficult. So you can see there, Gen Z thinks it's more difficult to kind of do stuff like that, while people from your generation don't see it as anywhere near as much of a problem as Gen Z does, or millennials. So I would say that, yeah, they definitely got a different look on things when it comes to that. And yeah, it's a little bit of laziness, I would agree. But with like finding a home and wages and stuff, here I have an article from the New York Times that states nearly a third of Gen Z is living at home and says they plan to stay. And they state that the average salary for a Zoomer is 50,000, and what they claim is that 32% that aren't living with a parent and aren't paying rent, that are living on their own, they're using half of that to pay for wherever they're staying, whether it's rental or a mortgage. And I feel like that's a little much, but still, if you're making 50,000, you got to use
No,
half to live.
it's beyond a little much. And this kind of goes back to education, right? Because if your generation was taught budgeting,
yeah,
right, household budgeting,
which I'm 15, and they never showed us how to do that kind of stuff. They never showed us how to write a check.
in any kind of common sense world, you are taught that no more than 25% of your take home pay
Yeah,
should be spent on housing,
yeah,
right? That's standard budgeting. The way you divide your income so that you make an actual budget that's survivable,
yeah,
where you're not struggling, where you're not dying,
yeah,
is 25% of your take home pay is allotted to your housing expense.
yeah,
If you exceed that,
yeah,
then you start making things tight, and then you create a situation where you're living paycheck to paycheck, but you're doing it to yourself
yeah,
because you don't have to. The issue is that people want, right? And when people want, they're willing to extend themselves
yeah.
beyond common sense in order to get.